They kicked me out after my husband died, but I went to the bank and changed everything. They thought they'd won. They thought kicking me out would be the end of my story. It all started the night after the funeral. I was still in shock, still trying to breathe through the pain of losing my husband of 25 years. That's when Sarah, my stepdaughter, looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Now that Daddy's gone, pack your things and leave. This house was never really yours." I froze. Her words felt like a punch to the gut. She said it with a little smirk that made my skin crawl. I walked out holding just a small suitcase. Tears rolled down my face while Sarah watched from the window, probably laughing, but life has a funny way of turning the tables. The next morning, I walked into the bank, still tired, still heartbroken, and everything changed. If you're watching this, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're from. You won't believe what happened next. At the funeral, I should have seen it coming. Sarah leaned over to her husband, pointed at me, and mouthed, "Gold digger." Mark, her husband, didn't even try to hide his attitude. You heard what my wife said. He said, puffing out his chest like he was something special. "Time to go back to whatever trailer park you crawled out of." Wow. Just wow. I helped raise his kids, paid for their private school from my own bank account for 3 years. But none of that mattered now. Gratitude clearly skipped this family. "You've got 30 minutes, Sarah said, scrolling through her phone like I was some chore she needed to check off. "Then we're calling the cops." The neighbors were watching the show, too. Mrs. Patterson kept peeking through her curtains. I gave her a wave. If they wanted a show, I'd give them one. "This is my dad's house," Sarah shouted. "You were just the help who got lucky." The help. After 25 years of marriage, that's what she saw me as. I stayed quiet, smiled, bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. If only she knew what I knew. They followed me around as I packed, making sure I didn't take anything. Sarah acted like I was going to steal their ugly old lamps. "Don't even touch Mom's jewelry," she snapped. I stopped and looked at her with a sugary sweet smile. "Wouldn't dream of it, dear." She had no idea. As I stepped out the door, Mark yelled, "Don't come back. We're changing the locks tonight." Sarah stood in the doorway, arms crossed, smiling like she'd won something. She even waved goodbye. That night, I stayed in a cheap motel and cried myself to sleep. But by sunrise, I had a plan. And unlike Sarah's, mine was going to work. I showed up at the bank at 9 a.m. sharp, documents in hand. Mr. Davidson, the bank manager, had known us for 15 years. When he saw the estate files, he went pale. "Mrs. Peterson," he said quietly, "your husband's lawyer contacted us. The will reading is next week, but I can show you some early details." I held my breath. "You're the main beneficiary on several accounts," he told me. "There's also a private investment portfolio in your name. Your husband's been putting money into it for years." I stared at the screen in shock. Robert had been saving for me all along. Sarah had no idea. Turns out, the woman they called just the help was about to be very well taken care of. "There's one more thing," Mr. Davidson whispered. "Your husband added you to the children's trust accounts last year. You're now a co-signer." The look on Sarah's face when she finds out, "I can't wait." "There's something very unusual here," Mr. Davidson said. His hands were calm, but his voice showed worry as he laid out some papers on his desk. These were records of the children's trust funds, accounts that were supposed to stay untouched until the kids turned 25. But in the last 18 months, large amounts of money had been taken out. I looked at the numbers and felt a chill go through me. Hundreds of thousands of dollars had been slowly pulled out of the accounts that were meant for Robert's grandkids. Well, looks like Sarah had been busy. Who took the money out? I asked. "Your stepdaughter," Mr. Davidson replied. "She was named trustee. The notes say the money was used for school and emergency medical costs. He paused. But what, Mr. Davidson? He looked at me. The amounts are much higher than what any normal school or medical bills would be for kids that age. My mind was racing. Sarah had been stealing from her own nephew's trust funds. The same woman who threw me out and called me a gold digger was the real thief all along. The irony was so heavy it could crush a car. I want you to freeze those accounts right now, I said softly, and get the papers ready for the will reading. Of course, Mrs. Peterson, I also suggest talking to your lawyer about starting an official audit. Smart man. Please arrange that too. I left the bank and drove straight to see Patricia Walsh, Robert's lawyer for the past 30 years. She handled everything for us, our wills, paperwork, and estate matters. When I told her what we found, her reaction was sharp and serious. "This is theft, Margaret," she said. "That money was set aside for the kids' future." "Can Sarah say the money was used correctly?" I asked. "Not without proof, and I doubt she has any," Patricia said. Then she pulled out a thick file. "Robert came to see me 6 months before he passed. He was worried about Sarah and wanted to protect you." She handed me a sealed envelope. "He told me to give you this after the will reading. But I think you should open it now." I opened it. Robert's handwriting was shaky, but his message was clear. "My dear Margaret, if you're reading this, then I was right about Sarah. I've loved her all my life, but I can't keep ignoring how selfish she's become. The woman I married deserves so much more than what you've had to put up with. Everything I built for you. Use it wisely. You don't need to feel guilty for accepting what you've earned after all your love, care, and loyalty." So, the woman they all called a gold digger had actually been left everything. What a twist. "When is the will reading?" I asked. "Friday at 2 p.m., Patricia said. "The whole family will be there." "Perfect," I replied. "That gives me 3 days to get ready." That afternoon, I made a phone call to the private school where Sarah's sons studied. I'd been quietly helping pay their tuition for years. She never even asked where the money came from. "Mrs. Peterson, so nice to hear from you," the headmaster said kindly. "We hope you're doing okay after your loss." "Thank you, Mr. Thompson," I said. "I'm calling about the Mitchell boys' tuition. Yes, we were sorry to see that last month's payment was missed. We understand that these things happen during hard times." "Missed payment? Interesting." "Well, actually," I said, "I need to change the payment setup. I won't be covering their school costs anymore." There was a pause on the line. "I see. So, should I call Mrs. Mitchell for the full amount then?" "Yes," I replied. "That's her job now." By 3 p.m., my phone was ringing. It was Sarah. Her voice was full of panic. "What did you do?" "The school just called about the tuition." "I stopped paying for something that was never really my job," I said calmly. "It's amazing how fast people change their tone when money is involved. You were paying their tuition? The part we couldn't afford." "Yes, for 3 years." The silence that followed was golden. I could practically hear her trying to make sense of it all. "Margaret, we need to talk." "Do we?" I asked, "because yesterday you made it pretty clear I wasn't part of the family." "We were just emotional," she stammered. "Dad had just died, and you got thrown out of your own house." "I'm not feeling very generous today," I said. "Please, can we just meet somewhere and talk?" Sarah asked. I thought about it for a second. She was clearly getting scared, which meant she was finally starting to understand how little she actually knew. I decided to let her worry a bit longer. "The coffee shop on Main Street. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. "Thank you," she said. I hung up the phone. Let her spend the night thinking about how deep she was in trouble. That evening, I sat in my motel room looking through bank records and Robert's personal notes. He had kept everything, dates, events, conversations. It clearly showed how Sarah had taken advantage of him, but it also showed that, deep down, he had still hoped she would change. The will reading was going to be something worth watching. When I got to the coffee shop, Sarah was already there. She sat, hunched over a cold cup of coffee, looking like she hadn't slept. Her hair was a mess, her clothes were wrinkled, and her face was pale with dark circles under her eyes. Worry and guilt really do take a toll. "Thanks for coming," she said, not looking at me. I sat down across from her and stayed quiet. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. "I've been thinking about what you said about the school payments." She looked up at me. "I didn't know you were helping with them. I thought the trust money was covering it all." "You mean the trust money you've been taking without permission?" She turned pale. How do you know about that?" "Your father added me to those accounts. I can see every single withdrawal," I said with a calm smile. "Looks like the maid has access to all kinds of important things." Then she started crying, not angry tears like yesterday, but scared, weak ones. "It's funny how fast people cry when they get caught. It wasn't supposed to get this bad," she whispered. "Oh, how bad was it supposed to get?" "Mark's business was in trouble. We were behind on house payments. School fees were getting too high. And Dad, he was so sick, he wasn't watching the money anymore." "So, you thought it was okay to steal from your kid's future?" "I was going to pay it back once Mark's business picked up. Or when the main inheritance came through." I pulled out my phone and showed her the bank records Mr. Davidson gave me. "Sarah, you've taken almost $300,000 from those accounts in just 18 months. The number hit her like a punch. Her face turned green. "That can't be right," she whispered. $5,000 for school expenses that went to your house payment, $10,000 for medical costs that paid for your trip to Hawaii, $20,000 for tutoring that ended up on Mark's credit card debt. Every example I gave made her sink deeper into her seat. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. I was protecting the family. Dad's medical bills were huge. His medical bills were fully covered by insurance. I said, "I have those papers too." Did she really think I wouldn't check? She put her face in her hands. "Oh, God, what have I done?" "You've taken money from your own children," I said, "and you've ruined the one relationship that could have saved you." "What do you mean?" I leaned forward. "Sarah, did you ever ask yourself why your father married me?" "Because you were young, pretty, and available. I was 25 when I met your dad. He was 38, had just lost his wife, and had 2 sad little kids who needed someone to care for them. I wasn't looking for a rich man. I was a nurse, working and going to graduate school." Her face changed. "Funny how facts can mess up a good story. Your dad didn't need my money. He needed someone who would love his children as much as he did. Someone who would always put family first." "But you never had children of your own," she said softly. "Because I chose not to. Your father's family became my family. You and David were my kids, even when you made it clear you didn't want me." Fresh tears started falling down her cheeks. At this rate, she was going to dry out. "For 25 years, I've watched you struggle. I never asked for anything in return. I paid for school books, birthday parties, car repairs, doctor visits, all without ever asking for thanks." "Why?" she asked. "Because that's what mothers do," I said. The silence between us felt heavy, like a wall we couldn't cross. "Sarah, the will is being read tomorrow. After that, everyone will find out about the trust fund. Are you going to have me arrested?" "That depends on what you do in the next 24 hours. "What do you want from me?" I stood up, grabbing my purse. "I want you to be the daughter your father raised, the woman he always believed you could be. I don't know how to be her anymore." "Then figure it out. You have until tomorrow at 2 p.m. As I walked toward the door, she called out to me, "Margaret." Yes. I'm sorry about yesterday. I'm sorry about everything. Truly. I turned and looked at her, really looked. For the first time in years, I didn't see the spoiled, angry woman who had pushed me out of her life. I saw the scared teenager who had lost her mother and didn't know how to let love back in. I know you're sorry. Now show me, because tomorrow the real test begins. The next day, we gathered in Patricia Walsh's office for the will reading. Every member of the Peterson family was there. Sarah sat between her brother David and her husband Mark, looking like someone on trial. Robert's brother Tom and sister Linda were on one side of the table. I sat next to Patricia. The room was thick with tension, like something was about to explode. This will be more interesting than I expected. I thought to myself. Patricia began. Before we read the will, I have to let you all know an investigation is happening. There have been strange withdrawals from the children's trust funds. Mrs. Peterson asked for a full review. Mark turned red. That's ridiculous. Sarah was in charge of the trust. Being the trustee doesn't mean you can use the money for yourself, Patricia said calmly. Sarah had gone pale. She had a full day to come clean, but clearly she hadn't. Some people just can't face the truth. Let's continue, Patricia said. This is the will of Robert Peterson, written 6 months before he died. The main parts were simple. I received the house, the beach place, and 60% of the family business. David got 20% of the company and a large sum of money. Sarah got 15%, and whatever was left in her trust fund. Then Patricia read a letter Robert had written to go with the will. To my dear wife, Margaret, she began. You have been the love of my life for 25 years. You cared for my kids even when they didn't return that love. You stood by me during tough times and cared for me when I was sick. Everything I give you now, you've more than earned. Mark looked like he'd swallowed something sour, but David and Linda nodded, clearly agreeing. Patricia continued, to my daughter Sarah, I love you, but I can't ignore your selfishness or how you treated my wife. Margaret was more of a mother to you than you allowed her to be. I hope one day you see her value and your own mistakes. Tears were streaming down Sarah's face. Good. Maybe the truth was finally getting through to her. To my son David, Patricia read, you've always shown respect to your family and to Margaret. Keep being the man I raised you to be. After the reading ended, people started to leave. But Mark couldn't help himself. This is crazy, he said loudly. She gets everything, and the real kids get leftovers. Mark, David said, warning him. Don't what? Tell the truth. She fooled a sick old man. I was done staying quiet. Mark, do you want to explain to everyone how your wife used her kids' inheritance money? The room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop outside. What is she talking about? Linda asked. I held up the audit report that had just come in that morning. Sarah took almost $300,000 from her children's trust funds over the last year and a half. The reaction was fast and loud. David jumped up so quickly that his chair fell over. Sarah, tell me this isn't true. Sarah couldn't answer. She just sat there crying while Mark kept yelling random denials like a broken faucet. The audit shows regular withdrawals, I said, enjoying the moment. Money that should have gone to the boys' college went to your mortgage, credit cards, and personal spending. Tom leaned in to read over my shoulder, his face growing darker with every line. Sarah, those boys are my grandnephews. How could you take their money? It wasn't stealing. Mark shouted. We're their parents. We had every right. No, David replied coldly. You didn't. That money was in accounts set up just for the boys. Nobody was allowed to touch it until they turned 25. Linda was staring at Sarah in shock. How much is left? I checked the report, slowly letting the moment sink in. About $40,000, out of $350,000. The number hit the room like a bomb. You could almost feel the weight of it in the air. Sarah finally spoke. I was going to pay it back when Mark's business got better. Or after Dad? David asked. After what, Sarah? After he died, she said softly. You were waiting for Dad to die, so you could use his money to fix this. It wasn't like that. But even as she said it, everyone knew it was exactly like that. She had planned to cover her theft with the inheritance, but she'd guessed wrong about who would get what. There's more, I said quietly. Why stop when things were just getting good? The business has been in debt for 2 years. Sarah, as the financial manager, should have told someone. Patricia nodded seriously. The accountant found more issues. Personal transfers, fake bills, and edited reports. Mark stood up, looking unsteady. He'd clearly been drinking. You can't prove any of this. Actually, we can. I handed him a copy of the complaint I'd filed that morning. She's being charged with embezzlement. Sarah let out a loud cry. Margaret, please. You said you'd give me 24 hours. I did. I said, I gave you a day to tell your family the truth. Instead, you let Mark insult me and kept lying. David looked at his sister like he didn't recognize her. How did it come to this, Sarah? I don't know, she cried. Everything got out of control. I didn't know how to fix it. Linda stood, clearly upset. I think that's enough. Margaret, I'm sorry. We all are. No need to apologize, I said. You couldn't have known. As everyone started to leave, Sarah grabbed my arm. Please, she whispered. Isn't there some way to make this right? I looked into her tearful eyes. I felt something. Maybe pity. Maybe not. There might be, I said softly, but it would mean telling the full truth to your family, to the law, and to yourself. I'll do anything. We'll see, I said. With Sarah, there were always more lies waiting. 3 weeks later, Sarah showed up at my hotel room early in the morning. I had moved to a better place across town while I looked for a new home. No rush. Suddenly, I was wealthier than I'd ever imagined. I brought coffee, she said, holding a tray with 2 cups and a folder. The folder had everything, a full confession. Every dollar she took, every fake document, every lie over the past 2 years. She also included proof of Mark's gambling problems, which explained where most of the money really went. Well, that was predictable. The prosecutor wants to meet you tomorrow, she said, sitting across from me. My lawyer thinks if I'm honest and pay back what I can, I might not go to jail. And Mark? I asked. Mark's not my problem anymore. She held up her left hand. No ring. I filed for divorce yesterday. I raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? Yes. He's been gambling away everything for years. That's why the business was failing. I kept thinking I was protecting our family, but I was just helping him destroy it. I looked at her closely. I was searching for signs of a trick or self-pity, but what I saw was tiredness and maybe real regret, or maybe just a very good act. With Sarah, it was always hard to know. The boys don't know yet, she said, about the charges or the divorce. I wanted to talk to you first. Why? Because they'll need someone steady, someone they can count on. They're going to need family to help them through this, she said, pulling out another paper. I want to give you full custody. I almost dropped my coffee. Even with everything that had happened, I didn't expect this. Sarah, that's not necessary. I told her. Yes, it is, she replied. I'm going to be charged. Even if I don't go to jail, I'll have a criminal record. The boys deserve better than that. You're their mother. I've been a terrible one, she said. You've been paying their school fees for 3 years. You remember their birthdays even when I forget. You've been more like their mom than I have. I don't deserve them, but you do. Her tears were running down her face. but her voice stayed calm. I reached out and held her hand. Sarah, what you did was wrong, but giving up your kids isn't the answer. Then what is? Taking responsibility, fixing what you can, getting help for what led to this, and trying every single day to become the person your father believed you could be. She looked up at me with red eyes. Do you really think that's possible? After everything I've done, I think your father spent 25 years hoping we'd have this exact talk. We sat quietly for a few seconds. For the first time, I started to believe she really wanted to change. Or maybe she had just become a better liar. Then she said softly, "There's something else I need to tell you. About Dad." My stomach tightened. What about him? The last time I saw him before he passed, he asked me to look after you. He said you were the best thing that ever happened to our family, and he was scared we'd treat you badly after he was gone. Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. I promised him I would look after you. I looked into his eyes and made that promise. And then I threw you out of your own house. Her voice cracked. I've broken every promise I made to him. But if you'll let me, I want to try to keep this one. I squeezed her hand. How are you planning to do that? By facing what I've done. By trying to fix things. By proving that the daughter he loved is still somewhere inside me. That afternoon, I called David to tell him everything. His reaction didn't surprise me. She wants to give you custody of the boys, he asked, sounding shocked. She's scared and overwhelmed, I said. She thinks giving them to me is the right thing. What do you think? I think the boys need their mother to stay and fight for them, not walk away, especially after all that's happened. They need to know people can change, that a mistake doesn't have to be the end of their story. David was quiet. Then he said, "You're a better person than me, Margaret. I don't think I could forgive her." "I don't know if I've forgiven her either," I replied, "but I'm willing to try." "What do you need me to do?" "Help me show her that giving up isn't the answer. The boys are going to need both of us." The next morning, I went with Sarah to her meeting with the prosecutor. We sat in a plain, cold room while she explained every money-related crime she had done over the last 2 years. It felt like watching someone do surgery on themselves, painful and raw. When she finished, the prosecutor looked at her and said, "Your honesty is noted, Mrs. Mitchell, but the amount of money involved makes this a felony." "I understand," Sarah said quietly. "Your lawyer has suggested a plea deal, 3 years of probation, full repayment of the money, and 1,000 hours of community service." Sarah looked at me, unsure. I gave her a small nod. It was a lot better than jail, which she might have ended up in. "I accept," she said. "There's one more thing," the prosecutor added. "You'll need to go to financial counseling and let us check your finances regularly during your probation." Of course, Sarah agreed. As we walked out of the building, she turned to me. "Thank you for coming with me. This is just the beginning." I told her. "The hard part starts now." "I know," Sarah said, "but for the first time in years, I feel like I might actually be able to do it." That evening, we sat down with Tyler and Jake to explain what was going on. At 15 and 17, they were old enough to understand the situation. "Your mom made some serious mistakes with money," I said gently. "She's going to work hard to fix them, but it means some changes." "Are you getting divorced?" Tyler asked straight out. Sarah took a deep breath. "Yes, your father and I are getting divorced, not just because of the money, but because a lot of things have been wrong for a long time." Jake, the older one, turned to me. "Grandma Margaret, are you going to help us?" Hearing him call me, that still made my heart skip. "Always," I said. "We're family no matter what." "Good," he replied, "because Mom's going to need help learning how to be normal." Teenagers, I thought. Sometimes they're wiser than all of us. The house sold quicker than expected. The new owners wanted to move in just 2 weeks. which meant Sarah had to find a place fast. With bad credit and legal trouble, she didn't have many options. A real shame. Really broke my heart. I found an apartment, she told me during one of our regular coffee chats. It's small but clean, and the schools are good. Can you afford it? Her face turned red. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. I need a co-signer. I'd been expecting this. Sarah, I can't support more bad financial choices. I know, she said, but I can't take care of my kids without help, and I can't get help unless I prove I can take care of them. It's a catch, 22. She had a point. It was almost funny watching her finally deal with real-world problems. Show me your budget. She pulled out a notebook filled with neat writing and careful numbers. Her handwriting, usually messy, was now clean and organized. Amazing what desperation can do. I'll be working 2 jobs, she said, bookkeeping during the day and tutoring math students at night. The boys have part-time jobs too. We can cover rent and basics, but I don't have the deposit or first month's rent saved. I looked over her numbers. They were tight, but doable. What about the money you owe back? $50,000 over 3 years. I included it in the budget. And support from Mark? Mark's bankrupt. There won't be any. She'd done her research. The plan was honest, just barely enough, and showed how far she'd fallen financially. If I co-sign, what happens if you go back to your old habits? You mean if I steal again? I mean if you spend money you don't have just because you want something. She paused. Then you kick me out and take the boys. Sarah, I mean it. That should be part of our deal. If I mess this up, if I prove I can't be trusted, you take them. They need safety more than they need me being proud. It was a serious talk, but it gave me hope. The Sarah who had kicked me out months ago would never have put her kids' needs first. Okay, I'll co-sign, but I want monthly financial updates. And the boys should know they can come to me if things get tough. She looked deeply relieved. Thank you. I won't let you down. Don't thank me yet. Do it for a year first. Live within your means. The apartment was small, just 2 bedrooms, thin walls, and old appliances. But it was safe, clean, and close to both schools. After living in a big fancy house they couldn't afford, this was a big change. It's perfect, Tyler said as we walked through. Way better than listening to Dad yell about money all the time. Jake nodded. And Grandma Margaret lives close enough to bring food when Mom messes up dinner. I don't mess up everything, Sarah protested. Mom, you burn soup. Soup. I laughed. I'll teach you a few easy recipes. I'd like that, Sarah said quietly. Moving day turned into a family event. David and Linda helped carry boxes. Tom directed the boys while they moved furniture. It felt like the first real family day we'd had in years. Well, real if you ignored the divorce and criminal charges. This is nice, Linda said while we unpacked dishes. It feels good to actually help instead of just standing around watching everything fall apart. Sarah's working hard to change. I said, she needs support. She needs consequences too, he replied. But I'm glad you're helping her find a balance. That night, after everyone left, Sarah and I sat on her new couch, sipping tea from unmatched mugs. The furniture was used, and the decorations were simple, but the place felt more like home than the fancy house ever had. I keep waiting for it all to fall apart, she admitted. For you to suddenly decide, I don't deserve your help. Why would I do that? Because I took you for granted for 25 years. I stole money and lied. I let Mark treat you badly, and I never stepped in. I put down my mug and looked at her. Seriously. Sarah, do you know why your father fell in love with me? Because you were kind to his kids. No, because I could see the good in people, even when they couldn't see it themselves. Your dad was a lonely widower who thought he'd never love again. I saw who he could be with some support and patience. And now you see that in me? I see a woman who made some awful choices, but who's ready to work hard and change. That's more than most people ever do. She started crying again. Lately, she'd been crying a lot. At this rate, I might as well invest in a tissue company. I love you, she whispered. I should have told you that 25 years ago. But I love you. I love you too, kiddo. Always have. Even when I was awful. Especially then. That's when love matters most. The boys came out of their room, where they'd been setting up their video games and arguing about where to put things. Are you two having a moment? Jake asked suspiciously. Yes, I said. Deal with it. Cool. Tyler burned popcorn in the microwave. Can you teach him how to use it? How do you burn popcorn? Sarah asked, shocked. Same way you burned soup. Tyler said. It's a family skill. Well, that's it then, I said. Cooking lessons start tomorrow. As I drove home that night, I thought about how much had changed in just 6 months. Sarah was still dealing with serious legal and money problems, but for the first time in years, she looked truly happy. Her boys talked to her with respect, not anger. Her family was helping her, not covering for her. Sometimes people need to lose everything before they figure out what really matters. For some, it just takes longer. Then came the phone call, 6 a.m. on a Tuesday. Sarah's voice was full of fear. Not the best way to wake up. Margaret, I need help. Mark showed up at the apartment last night. I was instantly wide awake. What happened? He was drunk and angry about the divorce papers. He started yelling that this was all your fault, that you turned me against him. Of course. Somehow it was my fault. It always is. Are you and the boys okay? We're fine. He didn't touch anyone, but he scared the neighbors. The police came and arrested him. He broke the restraining order. Mark had been given a restraining order the week before after causing a scene at Sarah's job, demanding money. Clearly, he wasn't taking it seriously. Big surprise. Where are you now? At the apartment. The police said we're safe, but the boys are shaken up. Pack some bags. You're staying with me until this is figured out. Margaret, I don't want to be a burden. You're not a burden. You're family. Take the help. An hour later, Sarah and the boys were at my place. I'd only lived in that townhouse for a month, but it already felt more like home than the big house I'd shared with Robert. Funny how peaceful life becomes when no one's trying to steal from you. This place is nice, Tyler said, checking out the kitchen. Everything actually works, Jake added, and there aren't any holes in the walls. He was talking about their dad's angry outbursts. Sarah looked embarrassed. They're still getting used to how normal families live. She said, normal's overrated. I told them. But being safe, that's not optional. As we ate breakfast, we talked about Mark. His gambling problems had gotten worse since the separation, and he was acting more desperate. Desperate people do stupid and dangerous things. I said, he keeps saying the boys' trust fund belongs to him. Sarah told me, he can't accept that it's already gone. Does he know about the criminal charges? He does, but he says it's all a mix-up. He told the police you tricked me into admitting things I didn't do. I almost choked on my coffee. The nerve of that man was unbelievable. Seriously? He really said that? Yeah, Mark lives in his own version of the truth now. In his story, you're the bad guy. Well, at least he's consistent with his crazy thinking. The boys were listening to our talk, their faces full of disgust. In other situations, it might have been funny. Dad's been acting nuts for months, Jake said honestly. Even before you kicked him out, Mom. He'd stay up all night gambling online, then sleep all day instead of going to work. We're glad you divorced him. Tyler added, he made everyone miserable. It was hard to hear two teenagers talk so calmly about how bad things were, but at least they were old enough to recognize when someone's behavior was toxic. That afternoon, Sarah got a call from her lawyer with an update on Mark's arrest. He's staying in jail overnight. The lawyer told her, but he'll probably be released tomorrow with more rules added to the restraining order. What kind of rules? Sarah asked. No contact with you or the boys. He can't come near your home or your job. And he has to go to gambling addiction meetings. Sarah hung up looking nervous. He won't follow those rules. Mark doesn't believe rules apply to him. She was right to be worried. Later that night, while we were finishing dinner, Mark called her phone 17 times in a row. When Sarah finally picked up to tell him to stop, his voice was loud enough for all of us to hear. You think you're so clever, hiding behind that old witch. But I know where you really are. I took the phone from Sarah's shaking hands. It was time to show him who he was messing with. Mark, it's Margaret. This is all your fault. You ruined my family. No, Mark, your gambling ruined your family. Sarah and the boys are safe, and they'll stay safe. I have rights. Those are my kids. They have the right to feel safe, something they haven't felt in a long time. I hung up and immediately called the police to report him for breaking the restraining order. We'll arrest him again within the hour, the officer said. This time, the bail will be higher. How long would this go on? Until he got help. Or until he did something worse and ended up in prison for good. Not very comforting, but at least it wouldn't be our problem for now. That night, I heard Sarah quietly talking to the boys as she tucked them into the guest room. She was explaining safety plans and what to do in an emergency. It broke my heart that they even needed that kind of talk, especially about their own dad. Grandma Margaret. Tyler stood in my kitchen doorway, wearing pajamas. What's up, kiddo? Is Dad going to keep trying to hurt us? I bent down, so we were eye to eye. I don't know what your dad will do, but your mom and I will do everything we can to keep you safe. Good, because Mom's been happier the last few months than she's been in years. Dad used to make her cry all the time, out of the mouths of kids. Sometimes they understand more than adults. Tyler, do you understand why your parents split up? Because Dad's sick in the head and won't get help. And because Mom finally got smart and stopped letting him hurt us. 15 years old, and he got it better than most grown-ups. Your mom loves you so much. She made some bad choices, but now she's working hard to do better. I know. She's different now. She actually listens to us instead of always being worried about Dad getting mad again. How do you feel about that? It's weird, but it's good. Like, maybe we can be normal now. The next morning, we got word that Mark had been arrested again for breaking the restraining order. This time, the judge set bail at $50,000, money he didn't have. He'll probably stay in jail for at least a week, Sarah's lawyer said. That gives us time to ask the court for emergency custody. What does that mean? Sarah asked. It means you ask the court to give you full temporary custody of the boys because of Mark's threatening behavior. If the judge agrees, Mark would only be allowed supervised visits. Sarah looked at me for support. I nodded. Do it, she said clearly. My children's safety comes first. As we left the lawyer's office, I saw a confidence in Sarah I hadn't seen in months. Thank you, she said as we walked to the car, for keeping us safe, for giving us a home, for helping me be brave enough to do the right thing. You're the one doing the hard work, kiddo. I'm just here to back you up. Still, I don't know what I'd have done without you. That night, the boys helped me make dinner while Sarah worked on her tutoring lessons at the kitchen table. For the first time in years, the Peterson family felt like a real family again. It had taken an investigation, legal trouble, and a restraining order to get here, but here we were. Tyler chopped vegetables carefully while Jake stirred pasta sauce. They talked about school and friends, normal teenager stuff instead of adult problems. This is nice, Sarah said, looking up from her papers. Peaceful. Funny how much easier life gets when you stop running from disaster, I said. Yeah, Jake added. Who would have guessed that making smart choices leads to good things? Maybe you should write a book about it. Tyler joked. How not to ruin your life, Jake said, pretending to be a book announcer. A guide by someone who totally ruined her life. Tyler laughed. And for the first time in months, Sarah laughed too. Real laughter. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Slow, messy, and real progress. For months later, Sarah's probation officer was impressed enough to suggest ending some of her requirements early. Sarah had paid all her restitution money on time, finished her community service ahead of schedule, and held down 2 jobs without any trouble. It turns out the idea of going to prison really makes some people change fast. I'm proud of you, I told her as we left the courthouse after her check-in hearing. It feels strange to be proud of just doing normal grown-up things, she said. Normal grown-up things are harder than most people realize, I replied, especially when you're trying to rebuild your whole life from nothing. We stopped for coffee at the same little cafe we always went to, the one where she had first apologized to me months ago. The waitress knew our usual orders and brought them without asking. It's funny how fast you can build new routines, especially when your old routines involved stealing. I have news, Sarah said while stirring sugar into her cup. Good news? I'm all ears. The accounting firm where I work part-time just offered me a full-time job with benefits. This was a big deal. Sarah had been working 3 days a week doing bookkeeping for a small business while tutoring high school kids in the evenings. A full-time job meant she could finally quit the second job and have some peace. That's amazing, I said. When do you start? Next month. And Margaret, they know about my past. I told them everything in the interview, and they still hired me. I reached across the table and held her hand. Your father would be proud of you. You really think so? She asked. I do. He always believed in second chances and in working hard. There's more, she said, pulling out an envelope. Jake got into State University with a partial scholarship. My heart filled with pride. Jake had put in a lot of effort after his parents split up. He worked a part-time job and studied hard, going from a struggling student to a solid college candidate. He's still going to need help with the costs, Sarah said. But with the scholarship, his savings, and what I can give, and what's left in the trust fund, I added. Actually, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. I've been paying more toward the restitution, and I've already returned about 60% of what I took. But I want to fully rebuild the boys' trust funds before Jake goes to college. Sarah, that would mean using up everything you've saved. I know, but those funds were never really mine. They were meant for the boys. I want to put it back the way it was meant to be. But how will you pay for your own living costs if you give all that away? She took a deep breath. I want to sell my mother's jewelry. That was a big decision. Sarah had always cherished her mother's jewelry since she was a teenager. She often talked about passing it down to her future daughters-in-law. It was the most precious thing she owned and the strongest link she had to her mom. Are you sure about that? I asked. Mom would want her grandsons to have every chance to succeed. The jewelry is lovely, but it's just stuff. Their future matters more. What about keeping a few things for memory's sake? I've thought about that, she nodded. I'd like to keep her wedding ring and maybe one necklace. The rest can be sold to help the boys. That afternoon, we visited a trusted jewelry appraiser downtown. To our surprise, the collection was worth nearly $40,000. Sarah's mother clearly had great taste, not just in jewelry, but in men too. The appraiser explained that this money would fully restore the boys' trust funds, with extra left over for college costs. Sarah didn't hesitate. She signed the consignment papers right away. Your mom would be proud of what you're doing. I told her as we walked back to the car. You really think so? I know so, I said. She raised a daughter who finally knows how to put family first. That evening, we sat the boys down to tell them the good news. Jake had gotten into college, and the trust fund money was being restored. Wait, Tyler said, trying to take it all in. You're selling Grandma's jewelry to pay back the money you stole from us. Sarah flinched a bit at how direct that sounded, but she nodded. Yes, that's what I'm doing. He looked thoughtful. That's actually kind of cool, Mom. Jake was holding his acceptance letter, tears filling his eyes. I can't believe this is really happening. Last year, I wasn't even sure I'd finish high school. Last year was a different time. Sarah said gently, This year we do better. Speaking of doing better, I said, I have something to share too. They all turned toward me, curious. I've decided to create a scholarship at the high school. It'll be called the Robert Peterson Memorial Scholarship for students who've gone through tough times at home. Like what kind of tough times? Tyler asked, like having parents who made big mistakes, but tried to fix them. Like watching your family fall apart, then slowly come back together. Like seeing that people can change when they try. Sarah started crying again, but this time from happiness. That woman could feel more emotions in one day than most people did in a week. Dad would really like that, Jake said quietly. He would. And I think he'd love seeing how all of you have worked hard to become the family he always dreamed of. A week later, we had a dinner at Linda's house to celebrate Jake's college news. The whole Peterson family came to cheer him on and to recognize how far Sarah had come. A year ago, I didn't think our family would make it, David said, raising his glass. Tonight, I'm proud of each and every one of you. To second chances, Linda added. To honest work and tough choices, Tom said. To family, Sarah said softly. To family, we all repeated together. As the night was winding down, David came up to me quietly. Margaret, I owe you an apology, one I never gave. You don't owe me anything, David. Yes, I do. When Sarah was in the worst place, stealing and lying, I was ready to cut her off completely. But you weren't. You believed she could change, and you gave her the chance. More than that, you gave her consequences, but with love. That made all the difference. My father always taught me that people need chances to become their best selves. Well, he was right. Just look at her now, working 2 jobs, living within her means, putting her kids first. She's become the daughter your dad always hoped she'd be. Later that night, as Sarah and I packed up leftovers for the boys, she asked me something she'd clearly been thinking about. Margaret, what if I hadn't changed? What if I kept lying, stealing, and blaming everyone else? I looked at her seriously. Then I would have pressed charges. You'd have gone to jail, lost the boys, and probably never rebuilt your place in this family. And you would have been okay with that. I paused before answering. It would have broken my heart. But yes, because sometimes real love means letting someone face the full results of their choices. I'm glad I made a different choice. Me too, kiddo. Me too. A year after we read the will, I stood at the cemetery with Sarah and the boys, putting fresh flowers on Robert's grave. We did this every month now, telling him about what was happening in the family. It was also the one place where Sarah couldn't burn anything or make any wild financial choices, so it felt safe enough. Hey, Dad, Sarah said, kneeling by the grave. Jake starts college next month. He's going into business, just like you always wanted. She paused like she was waiting to hear something. And Tyler made the honor roll again, 3rd quarter in a row. Margaret's been helping him with calculus. Turns out I'm not great at math, even the basic stuff. Tyler laughed. You're not even good at basic math, Mom. Hush, she said. I'm talking to your grandfather. I stepped forward and placed my flowers. Hello, sweetheart. I think you'd be proud of your daughter. She's become the strong, kind woman you always hoped she'd be. Sarah asked quietly, "Are you happy with how things turned out?" She'd been asking that more often lately, like she needed to know her hard work really mattered. "I'm happy with what you've done," I told her. "But your happiness is up to you now." That's such a therapist thing to say. "I've been reading self-help books." "Go ahead and sue me." The boys walked off to look at other graves, giving us some space to talk. They were getting good at knowing when grown-ups needed to talk about feelings. "Margaret, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Do you ever wish you had remarried after Dad died? You're only 55. You could still start over if you wanted." I watched Tyler and Jake checking out an old grave with a tall statue before I answered. "I loved your dad very much, but I'm not against love. If someone special came along, maybe, but right now I'm happy. I love watching you rebuild your life. I like helping the boys with college and their future. I'm part of a family I always hoped to have. This feels like the life I was meant to live, even if it took 25 years to get here, especially because it took 25 years. You learn more from the hard times." Sarah was quiet, thinking. "I used to think Dad married beneath himself when he chose you, a nurse instead of someone rich like us. But now I think he picked someone who knew that real value comes from who you are, not what you have." We sat on a bench nearby, watching the boys try to read the faded words on old headstones. "Sarah, do you remember the last thing your dad asked me before he died? When he asked you to look after me? Do you think I've kept that promise?" She didn't say anything for a while. Then tears slowly filled her eyes. "I'm trying. Every day I try to be someone who deserves the second chance you gave me. You don't have to earn a second chance. I gave it to you because I believed in you. What you're earning now is your self-respect. Isn't that the same thing?" "No. Self-respect is harder to get, and more important once you have it." Later that night, back at Sarah's apartment, we were making dinner. She was chopping vegetables, using the skills I had taught her. "The scholarship fund is going well," she said. $40,000 raised so far." I replied, "That's enough for 4 students next year. I want to be on the committee that picks the students." That caught me off guard. "Are you sure? You'd have to share your story with the people who apply." "I think that's exactly why I should do it. Who better to spot real change than someone who's been through it?" She made a good point. Sarah had gone from stealing money to becoming a strong single mom. She had a special understanding of what it meant to grow and change. I just wasn't sure if the world was ready for her bold way of thinking. What would you tell the students applying? That your mistakes don't define you. What matters is what you do after. That it takes time to earn trust again. That it's tough, but it's worth it. And if someone asks about your criminal record, I'll tell them the truth. That I stole money from my own kids, lied about it for a long time, and almost ruined my family because I made selfish and bad choices. That's pretty harsh. It's honest. And then I'll explain how I've spent the last year fixing things, rebuilding trust, and learning to live with honesty. You think that'll inspire them? I think it'll show them that change is possible if they're willing to work for it. The boys came out of their rooms after doing homework and helped set the table. "What were you two talking about so seriously?" Jake asked. "About whether I should help pick who gets the scholarship." Sarah explained. "That's a great idea, Mom. Tyler said right away, you'd know who really wants to change their life." "You think so?" "For sure. And you could tell them about all the big mistakes you made and how you fixed them." Sarah laughed. "Thanks for the support, kiddo." "Mom," Jake said quietly, "remember when you used to cry all the time, and we never knew why?" "I remember." "I'm glad you don't do that anymore. This is way better." "What is?" "Having a mom who's proud of herself instead of always sad or ashamed." His words were simple and true. Sometimes teenagers understand things better than adults do. After dinner, while Sarah looked over scholarship applications, I realized something. She wasn't trying to prove herself anymore. She wasn't waiting for others to forgive her. She was building a life based on her own values and plans. Her change was real. Now, the real challenge would be keeping it going. 2 years after the will reading, I got a call I didn't expect. It was from Mark. He'd been living in another state since the divorce, supposedly trying to stop gambling and get his life back on track. But more likely, he was just out of people to ask for money and was widening the circle. Margaret, I need to talk to you about seeing the boys. You need to talk to Sarah about that. She's their guardian now. She won't answer my calls. Have you thought about why that might be? He was quiet for a moment. I know I messed up. I'm trying to fix it. What do you want from me, Mark? I want you to talk to Sarah. Convince her to let me see my sons. I haven't gambled in 8 months. I've got a steady job. I'm going to therapy. And you think that means you get to see the kids you scared and hurt. They're my kids too. I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm, the way Robert always did when dealing with tough people. Though honestly, Robert never had to deal with someone quite like Mark. Mark, the last time you saw them, you were drunk and breaking a court order. Before that, you were yelling for money and scaring their mom. Why should anyone trust you now? Because I've changed. So has Sarah. The difference is, she's been showing her change every day for the last 2 years. You've been gone. I had to get my life together first. That's fair. But getting your life together doesn't magically fix the damage you caused. Earning back trust takes time. He was quiet for a bit. Will you at least ask Sarah if she'll talk to me? I'll tell her you called. What she does with that is her choice. That night, while Sarah and I looked over her monthly budget, something we still did even though she didn't need help anymore, I told her about Mark's call. He wants to see the boys. Her face tensed. What do you think? It's not my choice. But if you want my advice, ask Tyler and Jake. They're old enough to decide if they want to see him. If they do, find a safe way, supervise visits, public places, clear rules. And if they don't, respect that. Their safety and comfort come first. Sarah stared at her budget spreadsheet like it held the answers to everything. 2 years ago, I would have said yes right away because I felt guilty about the divorce. Or I would have said no out of anger. But now I want to do what's actually best for my kids, not just what makes me feel better. That night, Sarah sat down with Tyler and Jake to talk about their dad. I stayed in the kitchen, close enough if she needed support, but giving them space. Dad wants to see us. I heard her say, he says he's working on his problems and wants to fix things between you. What kind of problems? Tyler asked, not trusting the idea. The gambling, the anger, the money stuff. Has he paid back any of the money he lost us? Jake asked, smart kid, go straight to the money. No. Has he said sorry for scaring us? Not directly to you. No. There was a long silence. I don't want to see him, Tyler said firmly. Maybe someday, but not now. Jake. Sarah asked. Same. He made life awful for years. 8 months of therapy doesn't erase that. You're sure? He is your father. That still didn't give him the right to hurt us and then expect forgiveness when it suited him. I was proud of both boys for speaking clearly and standing up for themselves. They had learned not to harm themselves just to make others feel better. That evening, Sarah called Mark to tell him what the boys had decided. They're not ready, she said, and I'm not going to force them. I could hear Mark yelling on the phone, but I couldn't tell what he was saying. Probably better that way. Mark, you gave up the right to make demands when you chose gambling over your family, Sarah said calmly. If you want to have a relationship with your sons, you'll have to earn it just like I did. I earned their forgiveness by being honest and trustworthy over time. Mark's voice got louder again. No, I'm not turning them against you, Sarah replied. They made their own choices based on how you treated them. Then she hung up. She looked at me with a tired face. How did I stay married to someone who thinks being responsible is optional? You were both different back then. I said, do you think I'm being too harsh? I think you're protecting your kids. That's what a good mother does. 3 months later, Mark called again. This time, he had finished a full year of treatment for his gambling addiction. He wanted to send letters to the boys. Letters could be okay, Sarah said as we talked about it. They're less intense than phone calls or visits. What rules should we set? No asking for money, no trying to make them feel guilty about the divorce, and no making promises he might not keep, just honest words about his recovery and how he feels. She explained the idea to Tyler and Jake. They agreed to try receiving the letters as long as they didn't have to write back unless they wanted to. The first letter arrived a week later. I was there when the boys opened it, ready to support them if needed, or step in if Mark had said something wrong. But the letter was better than expected. Mark admitted what he had done, took full responsibility for the family's problems, and shared what he was learning in recovery. He didn't ask for anything or make promises. This actually isn't bad, Jake said after reading it twice. He didn't blame Mom for anything. Tyler added, that's different. Are you going to write back? Sarah asked, maybe. I'll think about it. Later that evening, Tyler did write a short reply, just 2 paragraphs. He said he was doing well in school and thanked his dad for being honest. Jake didn't write back, but he didn't throw the letter away either. That's progress, Sarah said. Even slow progress is still progress. I said, by the end of the year, the boys were writing back once in a while, and they even agreed to have a short phone call with Mark on Christmas Day. It wasn't full forgiveness yet, but it was a start, and more than we had expected. I'm proud of how you've handled all of this, I told Sarah as we wrapped Christmas gifts for the boys. I almost messed it up so many times, she said. I wanted to punish Mark by keeping the boys from him, or rush them into forgiving him before they were ready. But you didn't, I said. You supported your kids instead of letting your own anger make the decisions. That's what you taught me. That good parenting means focusing on what your children need emotionally, not using them to deal with your own pain. Where did you learn that? I asked. Therapy. Turns out there are books on how to be a decent human being. I laughed. Her sense of humor about her own growth had become one of my favorite things. Your father would be proud of the mother you've become. I hope so. I'm finally proud of myself. That's something. Then, on Christmas morning, another big moment happened. Jake told us he was changing his college major from business to social work. I want to help families like ours. He said, families that are hurting but still holding on to hope. That's a beautiful goal, I told him. I learned from you and Mom that the best help sometimes comes from people who've lived through the same kind of pain. And sometimes, Tyler added, the best way to fix your own life is by helping someone else fix theirs. Wise words from young people. Maybe the next generation really is better than the one before. 5 years after Robert passed away, I stood in the backyard of Sarah's new home. It was a simple 3-bedroom house she bought after getting promoted to senior accountant. Now, it was filled with the entire Peterson family for the yearly Robert Peterson Memorial Scholarship Barbecue. What started as a small family dinner had turned into a big event for the whole community. Funny how something that began with fraud charges ended up becoming such a warm, happy tradition. Grandma Margaret, a little voice called. I turned and saw Emma, David's 4-year-old granddaughter, running toward me with a dandelion clutched tightly in her small hand. This is for you, she said, holding out the drooping flower like it was the most important gift in the world. It's lovely, sweetheart. Thank you. Emma smiled wide and ran off to pick more flowers, leaving me with a fistful of weeds and a heart filled with love. Kids really do know how to spot beauty in places we miss. I said, "She really loves you," Linda said as she walked over and sat beside me at the picnic table, where I was putting Emma's flowers into a plastic cup. "I love her too. It's amazing how different things are now," Linda said, looking around the yard. 5 years ago, I didn't think we'd even be talking again." I followed her gaze and saw Sarah laughing with Tom's wife near the grill. Tyler and Jake were playing cornhole with their cousins. David was gently pushing Emma on the swing set he'd set up that morning. "Your brother would be amazed," I said. "He'd be proud of all of us," Linda replied. "But especially you." "Me. You kept this family going when it was falling apart. You didn't let Sarah off the hook when she messed up, but you helped her when she decided to get better. You turned a fight over money into a story of forgiveness. Sarah did the work, but you gave her the chance to do it. That matters." Before I could answer, Sarah walked over with a young woman I didn't know. "Margaret," Sarah said, "this is Jessica Torres. She's the first person who got our scholarship and has now graduated from college." Jessica was small, with thoughtful eyes and a strong handshake. "Mrs. Peterson, thank you so much for the scholarship. It really changed my life. Tell me about yourself," I said, really wanting to know. "I was 17 when my mom got arrested for having drugs. My dad had already been gone for years, so I was taking care of my 2 younger brothers by myself. I thought I'd have to quit school and work full-time." "What changed?" "Sarah found me crying in the school counselor's office. She told me about the scholarship program and also shared her own story, how she made big mistakes but found a way to fix her life." I looked at Sarah, who was listening quietly with a proud smile. She talked me into finishing high school and applying to college. The scholarship paid for my classes, and she helped me find a part-time job that didn't mess with my studies. "What did you study?" "Social work, like Jake. I want to help kids going through tough times with their families." "And your brothers?" "They're both in high school now, honor students. They're hoping to apply for the Peterson Scholarship when they graduate." Jessica's story was exactly what Robert had imagined when we started the fund in his name. Young people rising above hardship with the help of education and support. "What's next for you?" I asked. "I start grad school in the fall and will be interning with the county's Family Services Department." Sarah agreed to be my supervisor. I looked at Sarah, surprised. "You didn't tell me you were supervising students." "It's new. The university needed places for students to train, especially in financial counseling and family support. Turns out my background makes me a good fit." "Your criminal background?" "My recovery background," she said. "There's a difference." Later that night, after the guests had left and the cleanup was done, Sarah and I sat on her back porch, watching the sunset. 5 years ago, I never would have imagined peacefully sitting here with the same woman who once kicked me out of my own house. 5 years, she said quietly. 5 years, I echoed. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't changed? If I'd kept lying, stealing, and blaming everyone else? Sometimes, but I try not to think about what didn't happen. I think about it a lot. How different life would be if you had me arrested and just walked away. But you did change, and I didn't walk away. That's what matters. I used to think redemption meant getting forgiveness from others. Now, I think it means becoming someone you can live with. I held her hand. Your dad would be proud of who you are now. I hope so. I'm finally proud of myself. We sat in silence, watching fireflies blink in the warm summer air. There's something special about summer nights when you're surrounded by people you love, even if it took a lot of drama to bring you all together. Margaret, can I ask you something I've been thinking about for months? Of course. Do you ever feel like Dad planned all this? Like he knew exactly what would happen when he changed the will? I thought about it. Robert had always been a careful thinker, like a chess player planning moves ahead. I wouldn't be shocked if he had planned this whole thing from the start. I think your father knew his family well enough to guess how we'd all react. You think he knew I'd steal the money and get caught? I think he expected people to face real consequences. Whether you learned from them or not was your choice. That's very wise of him. Your dad was a smart man who loved you enough to let you deal with the results of your choices. Sarah was quiet for a while, thinking it over. I'm glad he did. Even though it was the hardest thing I've ever gone through, I'm glad it happened. Why? Because now I know who I really am when everything is taken away. And I actually like that person. As stars started to appear in the sky, I thought about the long journey that brought us here. 5 years ago, I was a widow kicked out of her own home by angry stepkids. Now, I was with family who respected and cared about me. I watched those same stepkids raise their own kids with love and honesty. Sarah, yeah, thank you. For what? For becoming the daughter your father always believed you could be. For giving me the family I always wished for. For showing that people can change if they're willing to try. She leaned in and hugged me tightly. Thank you for not giving up on me when I gave up on myself. I love you, kiddo. I love you too, Mom. Mom. After 27 years, she finally called me that. Robert's plan had worked exactly the way he hoped. That clever man gave us a real family, one built on love, respect, and growth, not just blood. And all it took was a crime, a court case, and 5 years of hard work. But in the end, it was all worth it. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you've got a story to share, drop it in the comments. Your voice matters.